It's 5 minutes with me.
Hey, friends, welcome to 5 Minutes with Marko. Here's a question that won't apply to some of you listeners, but one I get asked quite often, and that is how, when, and why do you split middle school and high school? My answer to this question has continued to evolve over my 40 plus years in middle school ministry. And some of that shift in my own thinking is a response to dramatic shifts in both the onset of puberty, younger, and shifts in youth culture. And some of that shift is a response to having had my own two kids move through their teenage years and into young adulthood. But at least some of this portion of the shifts in my response to this question come from a change in my thinking about youth ministry in general. So let's focus on that. If you've read anything I've written over the last 20 plus years, or even heard some percentage of this podcast's episode, you might know that I've harped quite a bit on the need to move away from an over reliance on the priority of youth ministry programming. Programs aren't evil, but the subtle thinking that great programs transform lives or grow faith in is, and has been for many of us, a false positive measurement of youth ministry success. If the goal of youth ministry is momentum, well, then combining middle school and high school makes lots of sense because it's tough to have momentum without a big chunk of teenagers. If the goal of youth ministry is energy, combining or keeping middle school and high school combined is perfectly logical. And if the goal of youth ministry is hype, then by all means keep them combined. In fact, for years, I've suggested it seems to make sense to consider separating middle school and high school into two groups when both of them have something around 20 regular participants each. I've suggested that there are great reasons to consider separating small groups prior to those numbers and combining for some things, worship, for example, even beyond those numbers. But I'm just not sure I buy that anymore for two big reasons. First, with the continued extension of adolescence, about 20 years long now on average, from 10 or 11 years old through the 20s, the difference between 12-year-olds and 17-year-olds just seems more markedly pronounced than ever. And I'm no longer convinced that the benefit of momentum and energy and hype is worth the trade off of providing a developmentally and culturally inappropriate ministry for either group. In some ways, and sure, this is slightly hyperbolic, you have three choices. Combine middle school and high school, enjoy a bit of momentum and streamlining, but forfeit being developmentally on target while expediting the headlong rush into adolescence for young teens who could really use another year or two of being an apprentice teenager. Second, you can separate middle school and high school, focusing more intentionally on both while losing out on some of the fun and energy that can come from having critical mass. Oh, and this option is much more work. Third option is some kind of a creative combo. For example, my church, where I'm not on staff, but I've been a volunteer in the youth ministry for 27 years, is currently embracing this approach as we've experienced a fairly significant downsizing over the last 5 years. Seriously, from about 200 students per week to about 30 students per week. So while our small groups are still grade specific and some programming elements like retreats are separate, much of our stuff needs to be done together. But if the primary value of my youth ministry efforts are no longer to create hype or momentum, if my belief isn't that big, cool programs change lives, then I'm going to have to side with the second or third of those options every time. The other big reason I don't buy into my old advice on this question is this: I don't know what you should do. And the reason I don't know what you should do is very simple and straightforward set of facts. One, I'm not God. Two, I have not called you into youth ministry or gifted you. Three, I don't know your context. Four, I hate blanket answers. My leaning these days is that it's best to separate middle school and high school as soon as you can, and as often as you can, and as early as you can. But what do I know really? Ultimately, this is a question of discernment. What kind of ministry is God calling you to in your context?
Hey, folks, quick little announcement. I hope you know by now that the main thing the Youth Cartel does is we offer a year-long leadership development program for youth workers called the Youth Ministry Coaching Program. I really believe it's a best-in-class coaching program. We've had 800 people go through it over the last 15 years. And I just see regularly in front of my very eyes, see people's lives and ministries transformed. So check out theyouthcartel.com and go to the coaching tab. No, we're currently trying to fill a cohort in Springfield, Illinois, and one in central Pennsylvania, one in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and a level 2 cohort in northern Indiana. So hit me up if you have any questions about that.
The Youth Cartel Podcast Network.